Hey Peyton, nice to see you again and welcome to AIDEAS podcast. We got a quote from Gary Tan, the president of Y Combinator and creator of the G-Brain, highly recommend it, where he writes, "Everyone thinks AI coding tools set founders free. Watch what people actually build with them. Rules, approvals, process, layers, the same cage, assembled faster. The tool that can scaffold anything in an afternoon will scaffold your bureaucracy in an afternoon too. Speed of construction is speed of calcification. Build the thing that lets you create new things, experiences that didn't happen before." What does that trigger in your mind, Peyton? How do you relate to that? The machine that builds machines. How do you use it in your business?
Good to be back. Good quote. This is really thought provoking for me in a lot of ways. Some of the threads that instantly emerge for me here is the external bureaucracy of the government and how that interacts with our businesses and what we want to create. There, I actually feel, at least so far, it's helped far more than it's hurt. But the risk of mass surveillance looms where it's just there's this real concern over every state becoming a surveillance state that's 10 times more effective than 1984. And who knows if this is the path we're going down, it's not determined. But there is this real power of this tool that could be used in that way. Thinking of internal bureaucracies, I think of, yes, this can whip up a bureaucracy very fast. However, it, my intuitions stack up where even if this can be used on offense and defense, it feels like it will probably net out to where you can cut through the new bureaucracy and the old bureaucracy. Even if the new bureaucracy is code-based, if your code can navigate all the way through it, then you still are at the net effect of getting to skip fast forward past a lot of the stuff where I used to have to spend 3 hours on a Wednesday afternoon filling out admin and documents and filling out how to fill out this form and navigate this portal or whatever. I feel genuinely optimistic about the tools to navigate actually keeping up to where the skip fast forward button stays applicable. The most interesting thread here of build the thing that helps you have new experience or build new things or whatever. This is really, I find more and more that this is possible. More and more I build some piece of infrastructure in some software system I'm creating. And that very infrastructure can actually be used for this new thing over here. So for example, I built this outbound email engine for my business that goes and finds new cold leads from this Apollo database system and then finds out stuff about them, finds their contact information, creates a set of experiments of cold emails to try. Within each concept experiment, creates a custom email, sends it out, makes sure the deliverability is really good because it's super personal and customized and all this stuff, sends it out and gets the receipts for what are of the 10 things that we tried, what are the 3 most effective, does another experiment to just head to head those 3 with lots of variants, tests the variants, customizes each one, yada, yada. And so I built out this infrastructure to generate leads for my business, business to business leads. But after building it, I found that actually this applies to recruiting too. I can use the same infrastructure for recruiting over here. And there's other things that I've done that actually, so I built out a system to sort of SEO revamp a website. And after doing it for myself, I turned it into a template that then I was able to use for a handful of other websites, even for other companies, et cetera, to get good results. And so I think vibe coding has unlocked this capacity to create something that isn't just a one-time use, isn't just deployed in one place, but rather you almost assemble these building blocks that you can then assemble in other places for other uses. You're like almost amassing a collection of tools and instruments that can apply in various places. And I've seen this with various RAG architectures that I've built. I've seen this with certain forms of systems and interconnectivity between systems and certain sort of logic infrastructures of how to have agentic AI kind of work with each other to self-check its work to create an output of various levels of robustness for various purposes within the business. So I don't really, I'm not the most well-learned person thinking about this. I'm sort of stumbling my way through this stuff, but I'm finding that software is kind of building blocky if you really are thinking about how your systems work from first principles, and that you can recycle a lot of your good code if you find that you build something that accomplishes some instrumental goal very effectively. You can then deploy it in totally new ways or totally new circumstances. As somebody that's been swimming in these waters a lot more than me and has been doing this since you actually had to write code yourself, when
Mm.
I'm sure this was way bigger of a deal, finding the right code chunk on GitHub to plug into your stuff. Can you share a little bit more about how a knowledgeable person would think about these concepts of code building blocks that can then be used to create new things?
Well, in principle, and thanks for your examples. In principle, it is just about input transformation. You transform input into a desired output. And it may be some kind of format, some kind of content, some kind of calculation, some kind of new knowledge which comes in, some kind of data which gets enriched. It's always about transformation. Otherwise, you wouldn't need these systems. And therefore, building blocks can be, if you create them correctly, you can reuse them. That's why there's software as a service products, because they created a building block and let other people's use this software as a service. They don't give you the building block, they just give you the service. And the same applies to you coding with agentic tools like Cloud Code or whatever you use. For example, you could create a best practice database security layer inside your web application, and you can have it as a module, and you can reuse this module every time you create a new application with a database of a kind, and so on and so on. You could create an asset which displays your company CI as a template. And you could reuse that in any kind of application you create with that, any kind of visual appearance you will have. So you just need to calcify the things which are according to your needs, according to your taste, to a point of reusability or modularity where you can just give it to the agent and say, hey, but make sure to use my company CI, and you find that in this folder. Be sure to apply the best practice of database security. You find it here. And then you can just weave that stuff in. And that's why you can explore anything with AI right now, but you need to know which kind of transformation is valuable to you. And if you know which kind of transformation is valuable to you, you don't need to have it rely on AI only. You can create software with AI that resembles the pipeline the transformation takes place in. So you create actually the infrastructure of information flow, of transformation flow. You create the value stream out of components that you are aware of how they work, what is your intention about them, and how you understand them, how they relate to your context and to your business. So this is why it is so valuable to be aware of how it works, how you understand it. And that's why it's so valuable to have a thing which builds the things you need to have other transformations. It's kind of like this multiplicative effect of your approach if the factory is the product. It's the same that applies to Tesla factories or now the Optimus robot. It's a robot which is made for, like, at least the vision is that it assembles itself. And if the robot which comes out of the factory assembles robots which come out of the factory, there's a multiplicative effort. The only constraints will be the resources and the energy needed for construction.
Von Neumann robots.
Then you have Van Neumann probes, which have intelligence, and you can send them out into space, and then they replicate themselves. Yes, Van Neumann, what a great mind.
Mm.
Yes. How would you, how would you view it through the lens of the factory as the product? And how does that relate to your experience with these tools?
It really does, actually. It's like, I feel like I'm operating at a frontier where I haven't fully articulated a lot of the first principles that I'm sort of stumbling into here. But there is some zone where having good context design, a good context infrastructure built in that can be modular and reused across all my systems is probably the biggest opportunity that I have for my software development ventures. If I was to have a perfect ground truth, Peyton has verified all the facts database of our knowledge base and a branding UI vibes sort of style database. Those two building blocks could really jumpstart and improve the baseline quality of a lot of what I do and really make stuff really shippable fast and validated and raise the floor of quality of stuff, which is really interesting. The concept of the factory of robots building other robots is really interesting because I would say agentic coding is so different than how I imagine programming used to feel like, where you plunked out one thing at a time. Now I regularly am orchestrating. It's almost like I'm collaborating with a team leader. I find the most intelligent model that I can, and I'm basically like a coworker with this thing, and he's in charge of running the team. And so it used to be I was building this stuff, and I just had like one really smart, super fast programmer that I was working with. And that was kind of how it felt. It was like a one-on-one, hey, we're working together on this. I'm working together with 5 of your peers on 5 other projects at once. You go off for 10 minutes and work on this and come back to me with where you got. Now, I'm more so working with, I would say, Fable 5, which we got rug pulled on this week, but Fable 5 when we had it for the most beautiful 4 days of vibe coding of all time, which was a Saturday through Friday. I was working with it where I hooked up sort of worker bees with which was GPT 5.5 toward the end. And I was basically like, look, you're in charge of this project. You're the architect. Here's my vision. Go like do as little as possible to work yourself. Use these GPT 5.5 agents. Run 10 of them at a time. Have them assemble all 10 of these building blocks. Then you review and improve the architecture of each of the 10 after you've audited the code they've already created. And then put them together, figure out how the links break. And so sort of having this one supermind orchestrating a team of 10 agents to build something really fast and really one mega intelligence is in charge of the big picture. This is really the way of it's like working with a team leader now as opposed to just working with one super programmer. And with the nest, that sort of fractal layer that's multiplicative under that, is actually I'm building these softwares where it's not deterministic software. Like all of these systems that I'm building are stuff that literally could not have existed 5 years ago because 5 years ago, you had to do it the hard way. You had to have deterministic code that actually figured all this stuff out and spit something out based off of an input directly. Now I just take all of the middleware and I skip it with some low cost API model that is at some efficiency frontier where it's really cheap. And I have basically, for example, on one of my stuff, I need to create say 20 outputs per day. I need this machine to go look into our systems and figure out what are the 20 things that we need to move forward so that we can submit one permit deliverable per day across 20 different projects, which would be like several full-time employees worth of work we found to create all these deliverables and all the details or whatever. So I have it to where I have the software is set up to where there's an intelligence that surveys the land to figure out what are the 20 things we need. There's 2 other softwares that's cross-check and double-check, are these really the right things to work on? And then instead of the old way where somehow I would have had to have perfectly orchestrated this database to perfectly pull the inputs from here and structured all the data well and figured out how to make this thing turn into this thing and templated everything really specifically, and then a human would have to double-check and revise from there and yada, yada, yada. It would have been really hard to build a software to do all of these things for these 10 different types of outputs on these all different templates for different municipalities, whatever. Now I just have a goal, a vision, a database of examples to look at. And then I have Sonnet go build it. I have a low-cost Gemini model, a low-cost ChatGPT model be like the sort of red teamers and review it. Sonnet ships it back. And so the AI is the middleware now. Like a plug-in API intelligence and multiple of them cross-checking each other's work is the whole middleware. And so this really couldn't have been done until you had this AI as the middleware intelligence. Like the software can have this nested agency, this nested intelligence that's skipping past what would have been. I don't know how I would have built, even with the smart helpers of building software. I don't know how I would have built a software that could have accomplished all of this without being able to plug into intelligence APIs. And so you sort of build a factory with robots in it as you do this when you're building software these ways. It's like you're placing little robots at steps of your way that intelligently like solve and figure out how to turn these messy inputs into structure, into deterministic moves, into messy outputs that fit the right format and the specifics of what you're doing. And so this software 3.0, this is the other it's like that you can build it way new, and there's this new type of thing that you can do because you can tap directly into intelligence within your architecture. This is it's crazy how it's not just that software got way easier to build, it's that you can build totally different types of systems that would have been impossible to build, or at least in my mind, I wouldn't have been able to build these things before. What do you think about
Never alone.
it's two totally different unlocks at once? What do you think about this?
Well, we have now the capability to create at a level never possible before. We would have needed a team of people, of really highly educated people who really know what they do. But now we only need to communicate our vision. We need to have clarity in our mind first. And then we need to have access to the tools and the technique of how to utilize them. I see you operating with a very sophisticated technique. You take different models and different models output. You gauge their strengths and weaknesses. You combine them together. You let the validation layer check from another model to be sure that the one model output doesn't have too many errors in it. And then you have a low-level model to like do some cleanup work, whatever. It is the technique which also creates a moat around how these things will be utilized. And then yeah, now it is possible with just you yourself, some tokens and a good model intelligence, some good harness to create products and services that were never before economically viable because you would have to pay so many people so much money. But now the space of possibilities, which is in between all the things that already exist, opens up because it is now viable to reach out and just put it into reality, make the thing real, and create some great software with it, some services, some architectures, some loops, carve out your technique, so to say. Do the things according to how the need of your company has it. Organize the data according to how you can make it productive in a good way. And also, it is about building out capability with local models. When you have the ability and play around with local models as well, you have very competitive models which have been released recently, which can compete with frontier models in terms of reasoning and coding abilities and context window and so on, just at the cost of your hardware.
They can compete again now that Mythos got yanked from everybody. They couldn't compete
Yes.
with Fable.
Yeah.
Now they're back. Open weights models like, we're back.
Today I woke up and thought, what the fuck? Such a bummer. And I wrote to you only because I'm a foreigner or what? And now you wrote back, dude, they cleared it for me as well.
Bullshit. I
Yeah.
remember the golden age of vibe coding was for 4 days this past week.
Yes, until now, but I'm confident that we have a similar level of capabilities available for local application as open weight models in our lifetimes. At
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
maybe in the
Yeah.
next 6 months, who knows?
Exactly. Like in the next year of our lifetime.
Yes, probably more likely like this. So what I want to point towards is if you build out the local the capability to apply local models now, it's similar to claiming your stakes in kind of grounds where you can produce something out of it. Like previously in the farming age, you had your fields, you had your soil, you would put in the seedling and the seedling had some genes and had different types of yields according to different types of seedlings. But at least you could just let the process run and the soil, the sun and the air would do their job and the weather. You would only need to harvest the outcome of it. And I see it similarly if you increase your capability of local AI infrastructure, because then you can calcify your layers, your pipelines, your data streams, and you have the control. No US government can undo it no more.
I need it.
You can just run it. Like, you can just let the sandwich things run with love and light. You can just put out some PV modules and let the sun shine on it and make the sand think, and you are productive to a level, and you can harvest the outcome of it, and you make it productive with however you apply it in your business. But if you increase your capability and build out local AI infrastructure, you will also have some kind of endurance against the just random or bullying of third parties. That's why I think you could like have these two ways of utilizing the most capable models, to the point of you build out your calcified infrastructure with the most capable models, so that the useful models which you have locally can run the infrastructure and produce stuff for you. You have the capability to adapt again, and then you also are able to just plug in this local model, even if it's not so strong, but you can divide and conquer your way to it being really strong. You can apply the Ralph loop again to just dumb it down, down to a point where even the worst model in existence can do a great job in building out the whole thing. And that's why I think building out your capability to adapt is a good call. Even in times the models become stronger and stronger. And then you even have like the amortization goes like, yeah, the models become stronger and you still have the same capability, but with stronger models. So you will have a bigger yield on your investment after time by itself. What is
That's
yours?
right. And that also is an element of when you build this like AI replaces the middleware in your software, then you experience that in your software systems too. So for example, I created a system 3 months ago that used Sonnet 4 as its vision system, and it had this bug, and the quality was low. And I just waited a couple months, and then a much better vision system at the same price became available, swapped it out, and my software got way better. It solved my biggest bottleneck of the software just from swapping out one model for another with no improvements to my code for that
Mhm.
specific thing. I made other improvements, but that biggest problem got solved for free for me. The local AI thing, I was already really local LLM pilled until today, and now getting rug pulled from Mythos makes me way more
Yeah.
big on I need to hone my AI. I can't get rug pulled. And I'll say what's next for me there. So the Mini Max did slightly push the frontier intelligence for local models I had yesterday. So I'm kind of excited to get that model and play around with it. Mini Max 3. But the other thing that I is a bigger thing for me is I'm really excited to get my hands on more agentic coding softwares that are open source. So I'm really I use a lot of Claude Code, but it like just Fable got rug pulled, and I want to have my own Claude Code that's local, that's offline, that I can use with my open source models. That's probably I think it's lagging by a certain amount of months, not years, from Claude Code, and so maybe it's 6 months is my guess. So I'll get open code and Goose. I forget it's Goose something. I'm gonna get it and work with, and I'm curious about Hermes Agent. I'm not an open claw I just am worried about security with these open source agentic systems. And so I have to do my own research before just blind firing Hermes, but I'm curious about it. There's some point at which I'm going to pick up some good agentic capabilities on my local computer that's open source, but I don't know if it's past my threshold of risk reward yet. I'm curious to hear, do you think Hermes is in a completely different tier of safety and security than OpenClaw, which I have my phobia of, or do you think it's kind of in the same boat?
No, it's in a similar boat, but also if you use like a really big model, like now Minimax 3, if the model is fairly intelligent, then it can like detect attacks from points where you didn't want to have input from. But also you have most of the security in your hands. Just don't allow anything too crazy, and just like really focus where you receive inputs from the models. And so that narrows the use cases down, yes, but at least you have a worker on your computer which you can get an answer from day and night. You have the ability to just send over large recordings of your meetings, whatever, and you should definitely start recording meetings in your company. Like in Europe, it's for sure only with consent. But definitely should collect these data points, because then you can just propagate it into your G brain and you can make it a company brain in terms of a company knowledge base, where also some bottlenecks can just bubble up. And if you have the architecture pinpointed out to you in a regular basis where you should look into a little bit more closely, you definitely have a great system which is looping by itself if you set it up like this. And even with now weaker kind of models, but with agentic capabilities, it is a great thing to experiment on and to build it out. And with these things as well, it's getting better day by day. And better you get your hands on it early, because then you know some kinds of limitations. The weaker the model you plug in, the more limitations it displays, because sometimes it doesn't interpret your
Right.
intent to the point of it being very usable without you needing to iterate upon it. But as soon as you know how to communicate it with it correctly, depending on the level of capabilities it displays, then it's like a remote worker for you, but on your desk and very private. And you have the control over your data. You can just anytime copy that file and put it into a different system. Anytime you have the access to it, even if the internet's down, anytime. So it's a capability to bridge gaps. It's a capability to adapt and to still be productive and still have sovereignty over your own data. And it's about that. Nobody can tell you, oh, you cannot ask this to the model like that because it's not safe, and our government doesn't allow it. And our government wants you, even by the way, think that the world is like this and not like that. And so it is about the right and the sovereignty to your own data, and also the ability to collect and do whatever you want with your data. And definitely it's a good capability, as you know, and as you build your system out yourself with your giant rack database of Wikipedia and Gutenberg project.
Yes, the sovereign individual element is the most exciting thing about local AI. There is no doubt. There's a reason why Vitalik is obsessed with local AI as the most interesting part of artificial intelligence. I do very much understand this in a universe where governments become more authoritarian, and potentially privacy can be a real, who knows, it's more uncertain than ever, and the downfalls of an anti-private society are more extreme than ever. The power of surveillance is way more extreme than ever before. I think sovereign AI is yeah, one of the few ways to take matters into your own hands and to change the game. So very yeah. Yep. So yeah, out of all this, I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed about getting Fable 5 back. I want it. I miss it already.
Yeah, me too.
And I am inspired as far as my go ahead thoughts is I do want to build a firmer foundation. I've got enough experience now building stuff that I can see that if I take a step back and build a firm context foundation of the core 80/20 that I use in all of my projects for my core business, that will actually have a high return. The core knowledge base and a core style guide, I think, are a good starting point for foundational context infrastructure. So I'll probably take some steps forward on that this week. What about you? What are your
Also,
next steps? What are your schemes that you're cooking up for the week ahead?
well, my next steps is forming a coherent narrative that really pinpoints to creating the value businesses need nowadays, capabilities that businesses would profit from nowadays, as kind of an insurance, but an insurance which you have the control over, which increases your sovereignty. And what I believe is as well sovereign individuals and organizations which are free to do and think how they think it's best for society is far better than like a government which dictates what you are able to use and whatnot, because it just increases the capability of society to absorb shocks. In my opinion, it makes society more robust if you have intelligence at your fingertips. Nobody can turn it off.
Mm,
So
mm.
forming out concepts and calcifying the processes and
So this is a new tangent. I apologize for opening it up in advance, but something dawned on me that I was really curious to ask
go.
about. I saw these AI economists bring up AI in talking about how much value will accrue to the two frontier models. And they seem to believe that it's actually fairly likely, given the open source stuff, that it will be kind of like electricity. Everything runs on electricity. Electricity is an unbelievable bottleneck in everything. And in fact, electricity providers are monopolies, not just duopolies or oligarchies in a lot of places. But nobody's saying, oh my gosh, all the spoils are accruing to the electricity provider. Rather, the spoils are totally decentralized, and 99.9% of the benefits of electricity go to the users of electricity. The businesses and the factories that run on electricity are not getting gate kept and having to give 50% of all their winnings to the monopoly electricity provider. What if what if this is the way that AI is going? And I feel like I have two different minds. On one, I see this and I see local AI as greatly empowered, even if we can't use frontier models. The local AI that we have in hand, this is a game changer for an entrepreneur in Nigeria. This is a game changer for an entrepreneur in Bangladesh. This is a game changer for a regular person that's not an entrepreneur in either of those places and needs better medical advice and better strategies and a better whatever the case may be. It really is this public utility, and these open source ones are so good that even if access to the frontier is cut off, the open source is so good and the cheap ones are so good. And at the same time, I just have this hunch if I look at Fable and I look at how useful, how powerful, how valuable that for me, and
Mhm.
thinking about it, it is so differentiated, even versus GPT 5.5 Pro. It's so far ahead of anything else that it's worth an unbelievable amount of value to me. I see both things true. I see spoils accumulating to the winner, and I see this value accrues at the application layer possibility, and value accrues at the user layer possibility. I see both of these things being true, like an electricity level diffusion of value, as well as an immense capture of value by the two leaders that actually coexist. I don't view it as a captive scenario, but I view it as such an immense value proposition for the frontier and a mass dispersion of what's free at the same time. So I'm curious if that
Yeah.
aligns with what you expect. This is a new thing for me. I hadn't thought about I had thought it much more of a winner take all and capture all the spoils and everybody else is a loser before. I don't think that's the shape it's going to take anymore.
Most of the it's like a value creation explosion, that's for sure. But it depends on policies for sure as well. It depends on whether all the user data just is to be extracted and then utilized for their own sake, or yeah, not or, but yeah, and the capabilities of the local models. They can just run processes on a continuous basis, which supports small businesses. The long tail is very long, and the use cases which are useful to the long tail is also very long. So the value created throughout the whole society with using tokens as kind of an economic value creation engine is wide and open. I see it similarly to you. The spoils accrue to the power plants providers, but nobody is hindering you to put some photovoltaic on your roof. You can be a small kind of power creator as well. But if you have a big as nuclear fission power plant, then for sure you can provide society with a continuous and big amount of value. Then there's the
Unless you're
distribution
in
network.
Germany.
Yeah, Germany not
You get yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
That's another topic. Yeah, they closed them down to be more dependent on the Russians. So
stonks.
see which former chancellor now sits in the VR of Gazprom. So there you got it.
Yeah.
See which studies got funded. by the big oil and gas from Russia. Like it was the studies for the Green Party in Germany to put a halt on nuclear energy.
Anyways, now that I've got you on that tangent, back to the back to electricity. I tend to agree with your points. I do think that there's this both end. I think it is such a rising tide. There will be some mega super winners at an order of magnitude beyond what we've ever seen before. And I
Yeah,
think that the baseline, the floor is just going to be raised immensely. The capability floor of the one guy with a stand selling flip-flops in Malawi is going to be elevated. The capability floor of a small farmer in Bangladesh is going to be elevated. I think and Anthropic is going to be worth $20 trillion in 10 years. And so there or 5 years. And so I think both of these things are going to be very true.
yeah. And sometimes you cannot measure value just in financial terms. The same thing applies to the internet. People spend lots of time on the internet and YouTube and get so much value that other people create out of it as well. Like we have our conversations, we provide them to the world, and some people get value out of them, but we do it just for the fun of it. And you cannot measure it in terms of, okay, the financials got up. Same thing with the output with LLMs and software you create. The amount of applications just went up like that in the App Store, but the amount of money made with apps just stayed the same. So, but still you have the utility, which with is it's much simpler to come to some point, come to some entertainment, come to some insights with these kinds of things. So it's a jumping board where you can jump to higher levels of your own thinking, your own productivity, higher levels of entertainment, personalized entertainment. This kind of value, which is more latent than really measurable in economic financial output, this will increase much more. And I think we should use LLMs for more than just light. We should get some washing services, and then they power the washing machines, and then the washing machine service providers, they get more value because they transform the energy into a service. And the same thing conceptually you can apply to providing engines for some kinds of transformations for customers. And there is a lot of value to be captured by the providers and by the people who sell and build.
Not to mention the use of this intelligence to create new technologies for innovation, for biomedical, transportation, building materials, all of these in chemistry, and all of these incredible this wave of scientific progress, this unbelievable tsunami of scientific
Yeah,
progress that's already well underway, including discovering new math. It's just, it goes all the way up and down the stack of everything is getting smarter throughout the entire world in an unbelievably accelerated pace. And the tailwinds of that are just enormous in so many ways.
yeah.
And so it's an exciting time.
Yeah, and with the creation of new knowledge, you can put resources from a place of lower yields into a place of higher productivity and a bigger yield. And you will have these kinds of effects like rippling down through society, and we will all be the benefactors of it. And yeah, the thing is, the future is still open to some point, but as the open weight models capabilities increase and everybody can utilize them, judging from my point of view, it is a net benefactor, even in bad case scenarios. Even in
Yeah,
bad
no
case
question.
scenarios.
Well, in most bad case scenarios.
Most bad case scenarios. Yes.
Awesome, man. Really enjoyed the conversation. Love exploring
Me
these
too, man.
things. So curious, so fun. I will talk to you in the next one, man, and happy building.
Appreciate you. See you soon. And thank you for listening to AI Ideas podcast.
AIDEAS 2026.